everybody. I am going to review a book today. Anyway, on to the review, actually. Right. So, when I was younger, sign language seemed amazing to me. You know, the idea that you could talk with someone at the other end of the room, even if the volume was very loud, was just so cool to me. In the end, I never learned it, mainly because I didn't have anybody to speak it with, and the different versions confused me, because, I would rather learn the Dutch version than the American version, but you can only really find online things about the American one. I'm still fascinated, though. I tried learning it with my little siblings a while ago, but, we've been kind of busy, so it didn't happen. Of course, I realize that actually being deprived of any of your senses must be quite a struggle for anybody, and it's not really something I'd want to have happen to me, but I just think it's just really impressive by how people with disabilities still manage to live relatively normal lives. Recently, I got to read a book about how deaf people do that. I've already read some books about blind people now. I did one about people with hearing disabilities. The Eubeltic Realm trilogy by Nadine C. Keels showcases the life of a person who is mute and hearing, and the life of a deaf person but who can speak. The series is about Abigail, who is mute, Dauntless, who has a speech impediment, with stuttering, and Valerie, who is deaf. Abigail grows up as a pickpocket, her father having disappeared after a violent outburst brought on by a mental illness. When she takes a trip overseas, she meets Dawn and his sister Valerie. Throughout the books, various plots take place, including 2 romances and more exploration of characters' backstories and the repercussions of said pasts on the present. Meanwhile, the kingdom is going through some big changes politically, with the king trying to bring back more compassion to balance out the justice. The series was marketed as fantasy, and I guess if you look at world building, it does kind of fit, but you shouldn't really expect any kind of fighting. To me, the books were mainly an insight into the lives of disabled people and looking at how their communities function. Just with the main story just not focusing on the facts that they are disabled. The main story was something else, with the books just showcasing their lives. I liked that the stories didn't really revolve around them being deaf or mute, but that the stories revolved around romances, because it also showed the protagonists, Abigail, Dauntless, and Valerie, had their own dreams and problems outside of the one thing that stood out to people first. The first book is told through Abigail's perspective, and then the next one is Dawn as a protagonist, and then we have Valerie. The books are still in chronological order, so we don't get any of the annoying repetition, when you switch perspectives and have to watch everything all over again from a slightly different point of view. What I mostly enjoyed about the books was the way everybody's character was portrayed. Sad backstories weren't just there to add a thin pretense of personality, they were stuck in consequently and shown to be still relevant in how the characters related to their daily lives. They had effect years after the things happened. Everybody's character was distinct, and I didn't feel as if their disabilities were their sole defining trait, as it is in many books about people with disabilities. They just felt like real people, and I often forgot they weren't communicating normally. Backstories and circumstances shaped characters, but they each had their own unique way of dealing with what life threw at them. The political side was the least interesting to me, because it was a lot of talk about things that I've heard enough talk about, and the last book was about who owns what land, and who has power, and how to be diplomatic, and I was way more invested in the romance. That being said, the word building seemed well thought out. Things made sense in a political sense, at least. At one point I did find out that this place had guns, and I was a bit confused, because I just assumed this was an era before them. And I'm still not sure when this is supposed to be taking place, but the most important part of the world building is the society, so it doesn't really matter. In the end, although this trilogy wasn't what I thought I was getting, I still really enjoyed it. The insights into the life of deaf and mute people were very interesting, and it has once again made me appreciative of how God has made humans creative in how they communicate with each other. The romances were sweet, and although I didn't care much for the politics, they made sense and weren't too boring or difficult to understand. The main reason I'd recommend Eubeltic Realm is that it gives you the chance to learn about others by reading a fun story. Anyway, that was it. I don't really have anything else to say other than, this was a good series. I enjoyed it, and it's also, a good way to promote indie authors, which is something I enjoy doing because it's just really inspiring to see somebody who doesn't have an official publishing agency behind them and doesn't have the greatest artists at their disposal, still manages to write something actually really good. And that's just really nice. So, that was it. I already said that just now. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. See ya!